This one seems interesting. Apparently, like, inspired by Polynesians. This chapter.
Hi gang, in the outer darkness of Warhammer 40k, in the void between galaxies, swims a chapter of Space Marines so mysterious that many in the Imperium hardly know of their existence. The descendants of exiled Astartes on crusade for 10,000 years, we think, the Carcharadon Astra, or Space Shark.
I'm assuming they probably looked into mostly Maori because of the tattoos they have.
Only return to the worlds of the Imperium when their ancient tithe is due. The Carcharadon Astra are a mystery even to the empire they protect. Exiled to the galactic rim in the very earliest days of the Imperium, their vast and ancient
the Imperium doesn't like us, huh?
Fleet swims the eternal void at the edges of the galaxy, pledged by ancient pact to keep...
It's fine. We're wayfarers. We will find new lands to conquer.
...mankind safe from the terrors that lurk in the void between stars. Their strike forces are spread thin in the darkness, fighting for millennia against unknown enemies and carefully conserving their resources.
Dons as in like Megalodon, probably. That's why, because of like the shark thing.
In the civilized worlds of the Imperium are even aware of their efforts, only witnessing their bloody savagery when unknown grey-clad Marines arrive from the darkness to rescue them from Xenos or heretic attack. The Astartes of the chapter emerging from the mists or descending unheralded via drop pod assault, tearing the heart from the enemy in complete silence. And it's unlikely that the survivors of such heroic actions will ever be able to make a report back to the Imperium because the Carcharadon...
Oh, okay. I see the weapons. I see them.
Payment in the flesh.
Actually, these tattoos and don't look Maori at all. They're like... more
flesh of the survivors, spiriting away whole planetary populations to fuel their endless crusade across the outer dark. The official origins of the Carcharadons are, as you might expect, lost to much of Imperial record keeping, a vague presence that has only rarely been sighted within the bounds of the Imperium, and when that happens, frequently following their own objectives entirely. The chapter has almost no official existence in the open military record and no officially recognized battle honors. However, the Mythos Angelica Mortis, a text compiled...
They just let them go around though still? That's kind of...
Many disparate sources in late M36 contains fragments of an earlier text that may come close to the truth, speaking of a chapter it calls the Carcharadon Astra, being dispatched into the outer darkness upon an endless voyage to ravage the foes of mankind and to set about the traitor, the alien, and the renegade without mercy and harrow them in their places of strength. And it's this quote that bears a striking similarity to a much older record related to the Raven Guard Legion of the Great Crusade and the rediscovery of their Primarch, Corax. In the days of unification, before the Great Crusade was launched, the earliest members of the 20 Space Marine legions were recruited from the population of ancient Terra. Some of these early legions would carve a reputation for themselves as dogged professional soldiers, some as glorious heroes who served as an aspirational symbol of the Imperium, but a good few of the early legions were designed as something a bit less refined. Barbarian hordes to terrorize the warlords who
space
held out against the Emperor, callous murderers to quell populations, attrition fighters dropped into war zones and
most of these turn bad.
to forcibly replace their own numbers. Many of the early legions were the Emperor's instruments of terror, and one of the cruelest were the warriors of the 19th Legion. Recruited from the sons of the nomadic Xeric tribes of the Asiatic Dust Plain, the warriors of the 19th inherited the tribesmen's disdainful attitude to the weak and propensity for cruelty against vanquished enemies. The culture of the tribes demanded that a vanquished enemy be watched over with a cold, all-seeing eye, and any hint of recidivisms crushed utterly. And the 19th put this to good use in the armies of the Emperor. Their Astartes became famous for their ability to shift from silent hunters to a blizzard of callous brutality in the blink of an eye.
I mean, you need these guys, right? You have like the covert line. For us, it's like the Royal Marines in the UK. They do all the covert shit. Then you have the infantry. And within the infantry, you have some crazy people. And America knows this very, very well. They tried to get as many crazy people during the Vietnam War. Pumped them all full of drugs and shit. I mean,
a calculated move to keep their conquered foes
you need a little bit of everything, man. Just a little bit. Maybe some it's too much. I don't know.
And they
depends what you're after.
During the Unification Wars, many of the warlords of ancient terror holding out against the armies of unity would find their officer tier suddenly assassinated by unseen bolts, their troopers kept confused and disorganized until a strike force of the 19th would descend as if from nowhere to rip the heart out of their army. And afterwards, the blank-eyed veterans of the 19th would march the survivors deep into the Dust Bowl to be watched over in brutal concentration camps and harvested for new recruits. When the Crusade came,
Yikes.
the legions left Terra, and alongside those glorious examples of imperial martial strength, the 19th also took their methods across the galaxy, often fighting as auxiliaries alongside
so
the
they split it
Lunar
off. I'm assuming right now they just split off from the 19th. So they were brutal.
of Horus Lupercal. Enemies of the Lunar Wolves, retreating before their massed advance, would find their supply lines cut, their routes of retreat blocked, and ambushes laid for them by the black-eyed, silent Astartes of the 19th, their retreating formations brutally cut down by the pale warriors emerging from shadows, the survivors decimated and marched off to join the slave trains of the Legion. But when the Great Crusade finally rediscovered the lost Primarch of the 19th Legion, Corvus Corax, on the moon of Deliverance, there was to be little in the way of a joyous reunification. Corax was a freedom fighter who'd grown up on a prison moon. He saw himself as a warrior of the people, not an oppressor, and the slave-taking cruelty of the Terran 19th.
I see the split off then. Wait, why would this chapter change though? Why would this split up? And then they made the Carcharadons.
Reminded him a bit too much
Did I get pushed
of
out
the
as
Masters of Deliverance he'd just defeated. As the 19th Legion grew with new recruits from Deliverance and from its parent planet, Kievar, the old Terran Legionnaires were sidelined, their tactics considered distasteful by their Primarch, their warriors used as frontal assault troops until their numbers dwindled, such as in the tragic Battle of Gate 42, where thousands of Terran-born Raven Guard died fighting alongside the Iron Warriors. Eventually, despairing at what to do with the old Terran 19th and unwilling to incorporate their tactics into his forces, the remaining Terran Legionnaires were all but exiled. The Pale Nomads, those grey-armoured Legionnaires of the Dustfields, and their Shade Captains and Shade Lords, including the original Legion Master, Arcus Phal, were reorganised into a number of nomad predation fleets, a self-sufficient pattern of
Okay, so I just thought there was like some sort of like infighting or whatever. They just split. Okay.
long-range expeditionary fleet, and then dispatched.
Now, how did that group somehow? How are they gonna explain this like Polynesian like inspired thing?
Their Primarch to the far galactic north, with orders to patrol the outer rim and the void between galaxies, keeping watch.
It makes sense that there would be this group voyaging out into the vastness, you know? That makes sense.
Imperium until otherwise ordered. And those orders never came. The Terran 19th faded into memory, never recalled, even during the darkest days of the Horus Heresy that followed, forgotten by their Primarch and forgotten by the Imperium. There are, of course, no official records that link these lost Terran Legionnaires to the later Carcharadon Astra. In fact, the Carcharadons chapter has few records of its own past, and what remains is heavily mythologized. But the organization of the current chapter and its unique traditions do point to numerous links between them and the ancient dust-clad of Terra. The Carcharadons are a fleet-based chapter, operating for millennia on the ancient and rare nomad
So this just means they haven't even got it. They haven't got to it yet. They haven't got to like making like a backstory. It would be cool, man. They should make one. I would be like super intrigued to read the story.
Predation pattern. This organization is designed for primarily Space Marine battle groups that are forced to operate for long periods of time away from any support network, entirely self-contained. Nomad predation fleets voyage without end, pausing only to attack targets within their means to destroy without threatening their own viability as a fighting force, which allows them to acquire the resources needed to sustain themselves while avoiding or merely raiding those enemies too powerful to attack in force. The fleet of the Carcharadons chapter is, as you might expect, extensive and shows signs of being the product of millennia of capture and refit. Their flagship, the Nikor, is a vast vessel that seems
Segmentum Pacificus fleet base. Wow. Okay.
to be based around an ancient Charybdis-class Grand Cruiser, one of the very few remaining since the days of the Crusade, heavily modified with additional teleportation banks and void shields. Its attendant fleet is eclectic and sprawling, with numerous vessels showing signs of being salvaged, extensively repaired, or just ancient in provenance. However, that fleet rarely acts as one. The Carcharadons' area of patrol is unimaginably vast. The depths of the void between galaxies are home to all manner of extragalactic Xenos threat.
I want them. I want the community to make them bigger than normal, man, because generally are. And Polynesians look at the NFL, and I'm just telling you, man,
fringe empires or just pre-imperial human settlements, deep void stations millennia old, heretic strongholds from before the rise of the Imperium, and pirate havens ring the edge of the galaxy in the deep void. And small numbers of Carcharadons are frequently dispatched to deal with threats as the chapter sees fit. While the chapter retain a very broad adherence to the Codex Astartes,
I hope this explains a little bit about like what their drawings, their artwork, and tattoo.
An unknown number with command staffs and the usual officer types. Each of their companies seems mostly self-sufficient, operating as a slightly overstrength battle company containing not only its own scout initiates, but its own core of Terminator armored veterans. Reserve companies have never been observed, and the battle companies themselves are frequently broken down much further. Individual squads of Carcharadons dispatched to chase some rumor or quell some threat. Their company markings and rank structure also deviate significantly from the Codex standard. The armor of the Carcharadons is ash grey, covered in a bewildering series of markings that are impenetrable to outsiders, abstract swirls and symbols of fanged maws and oceanic predators being common expressions of the chapter's insular culture. Warriors of the chapter frequently bear scrimshawed bone talismans or exhibit other barbarous practices, such as the embedding of the teeth of their enemies in their skin. Their company commander...
I mean, it kind of just branched off, right, from another chapter. I mean, they could still write it like that. They started making their own culture. Like, it would be cool to find out, like, later on that they've been holding, like, this tradition for, like, a while, since actual, like, wayfarers and Polynesians from Terra
retain the ancient titles of Shade Captain and possibly a holdover from their origins, and their chapter master bearing the title of Shade Lord. The current holder of that title is the Shade Lord Tiberos, sometimes recorded as
Shade Lord. Does that have any link? I'm blanking. Shade Lord and
Tiberon, known as the Red Weight, a hulking and terrifying warrior clad in Artificer Terminator armor with ancient dual lightning claw cum chain fist weapons known as Hunger and Slake, and said to be able to go from silent watchfulness to brutal rage in the blink of an eye. This duality of temperament is common throughout the chapter.
No, Predator, man. The helmet, not that type. The Alien vs Predator one.
The Astartes of the Carcharadons are observed to be cautious, taciturn, even watchful by those who serve alongside them, but with a marked tendency to erupt into a frenzy of bloodlust once in combat.
Wait, what?
Taciturn, even watchful by those who serve alongside them, but with a marked tendency to erupt.
Chill, man. What chill?
The Astartes of the Carcharadons are observed to be cautious, taciturn, even watchful by those.
Okay. Typically, like people's view on like I think it's mostly because Americans see some summons a lot. It's like friendly until you piss them off.
Those who serve alongside them, but with a marked tendency
That's the general
to erupt
trope.
into a frenzy of bloodlust once in combat. The chapter exhibits a strong preference for close quarters engagement. Their Marines frequently equipped with an array of bayonets, blades,
No
and
clubs.
chain attachments. This overwhelming
It's a lot of bladed stuff, but like no club. Oh, there's one.
aggression is tightly
Fuck
channeled.
yeah,
The
dude.
chapter's forces often adopt rapid strike tactics, seeking to approach the enemy either with extreme speed or by stealth, getting as close as possible before striking with the element of surprise. What follows is an almost
A stealthy Polynesian brother. Wrong one. The wrong type of people, man.
animalistic
What?
eruption of carnage before the strike force disappears back into the void, possibly to return and attack again, slowly bleeding the foe dry, a doctrine that suits their often limited resources. The chapter also displays an almost complete disregard for collateral damage once committed. Though the chapter are known to pick their targets carefully, once engaged, civilian casualties seem almost irrelevant to them. That this fury
I wonder why a
and
shark,
rage-
though. I wonder why a shark. I wonder if the company delved in deep into spirit animals, families, clans, and stuff like that. Because is this chapter like one family? Is that what it is? It most likely is, right? I think that's generally how chapters work. Like, I wonder how deep they delved into that.
is
Oh, was it just like surface level? This is generally what we know about Polynesians, and then we'll just slap a couple of things here and there.
by an eerie stillness is obvious to those who have served alongside them. Recorded sightings of the chapter frequently have them turning up unannounced from the deep void, their emissaries often silent, or when they do choose to converse, speaking in archaic forms of High Gothic long fallen out of use. But few observers know how deep this respect for the stillness of the void goes. Within the chapter, the emptiness of the void is a source of control and calm, something that the warriors of the chapter meditate on, spending days or weeks alone in their cells or looking out on the endless starless blackness, attempting to find the void within to reflect the void without. The brothers of the chapter revere solitude and silence. Their ships are often as silent as possible, their lumens kept dimmed, and their lower decks covered in inches of cold, still.
I thought they were gonna be like more into like mana type stuff. That's what I thought this was gonna go into. Like, if you didn't know, mana comes from the term, the word comes from New Zealand, Aotearoa. I thought they were gonna like do something with that, but like I guess I get the link, the vastness of the sea, of the ocean, just being weeks without contact of other people when sailing.
In fact, it's common for the chapter to operate under a complete vow of silence, the brothers communicating only through touch or hand sign. Many serving alongside them have noted the
Through
eerie
touch?
silence
Hold on now. How many brothers are getting touched? I mean,
of the chapter, even in the midst of furious combat, mistakenly believing that they communicate only through closed intra-squad vox, but in truth, the brothers of the chapter are simply silent, their minds still and deficient, seeking the purity of the void. This vow of silence is only put aside when talking to those outside the chapter, when conducting complex mission briefings, or commonly when undertaking ritual observances, for while the chapter do not make a show of their culture to
oh yes, tell us about the rituals, man. Do they do any sacrifices, any human eating, anything like that? Because this is weird. Like, if you do delve in deep, there's like gods and stuff that we believe, or used to believe, before fucking Christianity took over, which is kind of like what? You believe in other gods and not the emperor, you know?
outsiders, they have a unique and rich set of religious traditions that far predate the imperial cult of the Ministorum.
Oh yeah?
Carcharadons revere the emperor as Rangu, Void Father.
As what?
The Carcharadons revere the emperor as Rangu, Void Father,
Rangu?
the Lord of Silence and Source of All, who dispatched them millennia ago on their crusade, and also make observances to
Rangu? That's not a Tongan thing. We don't have we don't have our language. Doesn't sound anything.
a mysterious founder figure who they know as the Forgotten One, he who first led them into the void. It's unclear if that's a reference to their Primarch, most likely Korax, or their original leader, possibly the Shade Lord Arcus Fall. It might be that they make no distinction. In fact, their entire mission has taken on a semi-religious quality. They're aware of
there's
their
some
near
Maori
exile,
shit. There's some Maori shit, dude. Okay, far out, dude.
they've forgotten the reasons, and they remain dedicated to protecting the fringes of mankind's Imperium, though they know they can't fully return to it. However, for all that mysticism, the chapter are also immensely practical. Brothers of the chapter have been known to trade and barter with human settlement.
Aloha. It's like I said, like, there's some French shit. There's some French food, man. And you said, Alvidasen. Or some shit, like, wrong place, bro.
On the rim of the galaxy for information on enemy activities or for resources when they run low, and they maintain ties in many of the less objectionable pirate and renegade ports of the void, including amongst specific renegade Astartes who they seem to have decided are not a threat. In times of dire scarcity, they've even been known to barter for gene seed reserves with the renegade Ashen Claws, a force of space marines who might share a very similar origin amongst the exiled Astartes.
I need to learn more about gene seed
When this
stuff.
trade isn't enough, the chapter reverts to a system of tithing. The Carcharadons maintain the ancient right.
Founding unknown. Chapter world and deployment. What? Unknown. Gene seed. Known. There's just nothing on these guys. Bro.
Granted by their edicts of exile to descend upon imperial worlds and requisition whatever they need to keep going. The most common form this takes is the red tithe, a way of replenishing their numbers. Led by a captain known as a Reaper Prime, the chapter descends on a human settlement and simply steals away everyone they deem of use. The youngest are tested for entry into the chapter, and those that survive the implantation process become the next generation of Marines, but the majority of the population will be
So in 40k, we're still pillaging. We're still pillaging. Give us some sacrifices, man. Give us some more rituals, bro.
assigned to a lifetime of servitude as chapter serfs, corralled below decks to wait upon their masters, either out of sight or in total silence, and frequently segregated by sex. Spare mouths to feed are not something a nomadic chapter would tolerate. The Carcharadons don't undertake a red
Do they eat some? Maybe.
lightly, and they often try and direct their efforts against imperial prison worlds or the loyal survivors of their attacks, but productive imperial worlds have been taken too, the few survivors retelling stories of their skies suddenly being filled with the grey ships of the chapter, and terrifying grey armoured warriors stealing away everyone they deem of use. Those taken as initiates are mind-wiped and conditioned into the traditions of the chapter. Tests on the bodies of fallen Carcharadons by the Mechanicus have indicated that their gene seed is remarkably untainted and still shows many markers belonging to the Raven Guard Legion, though this is far from uniform. The trading of gene seed with outside sources has almost certainly resulted in a mix of gene seed types in use, not only from the 19th Legion, but also from the 8th Legion and possibly even the bloody 12th Legion too.
We fucking mongrels. And you know what? Yeah. And today, bro, just look at Hawaii, man. All the Hawaiians are like, bro, they got some Asian mixed in, man. It's it's I don't know. If I speak, I'm in big trouble.
Whatever the origin, there are some common effects of the gene seed. Members of the chapter, as they grow older, grow paler and paler. Carcharadon brothers frequently display a pallid grey, deathly pallor, and their veterans are often possessed of inky black eyes with no visible iris. The flesh of the chapter is not the only thing tithed.
Is that representing like how we view ghosts? Is that kind of...
Chapter's forges seem extensive, with a large contingent of drop pods, heavy assault vehicles, and, as might be expected, void-born interface craft. And their arms and armour often seem ancient and rare compared to other chapters. The easily repaired Mark V Heresy pattern of power armour is a very common product of the forges, as is the ancient Phobos pattern of bolt gun. But the chapter...
I mean, what is it? A little callback to like how we use canoes to sail around the Pacific Ocean, colonizing everything, whilst other places had like huge ships. And it took until like what was it, 2014, for people to like believe, oh wait, they actually did this. This is true. Because previously they thought, oh, these savages, man, you think they can sail around the seas? What? In tiny canoes? Come on now. Only we can do that. Only us. Oh, bro.
It also retains the use of a surprisingly large number of Terminator suits, often of mixed and ancient marks. When those supplies run low, the chapter conducts the Grey Tithe, led by a captain who holds the rank of Harvester Prime, where the lost Archaeotech the chapter recover from the Rim is traded for new supplies of war material with the Adeptus Mechanicus.
These cameras.
All of this has resulted in the chapter partly being seen as a reliable ally and partly a long-forgotten myth. The exploits of the Carcharadons over the years since their mysterious founding are not recorded as the actions of a military force, but must be pieced together from scattered reports and survivor testimony. And as such, the chapter's been confused with...
It sounds like a fucking unloved chapter. Like they made this chapter, they found like some Polynesian shit and they were like, whoa, that's cool, for like a week, and made this shit and then they just forgot about it. That's what it sounds like.
The others over the years, especially ones like the Void Reapers and Blood Sharks, who have similar iconography. The Canticle of Cassandra Lev is a mythologized account of the events of the 7th Black Crusade in M37 that describes the arrival of a grey-clad chapter of unknown origin.
Bro has like
from the
Dalek legs, man. Not even kidding. Bro has 2 Daleks on his legs. How big is he? Bro.
the dark, and whose gaze did mirror the void of oblivion. The unknown chapter harried and pursued the forces of Abaddon the Despoiler, falling on them with great fury, and in the process rescuing the Blood Angels chapter after their defeat at Midian. The crypt world of Hypastis records this conflict in a great fresco, but in every depiction of the grey-clad saviours, their faces are replaced with featureless discs of black obsidian. The reports of the rogue trader Horothis, when mapping the Calixis expanse, notes the rescue of his flagship from Jakari raiders by a force of grey-clad space marines who arrived unheralded and tore through the Xenos with a bloody vengeance. The commander of those Astartes, pale of skin and with blank black eyes and sharpened teeth, refused to identify himself or his forces to the rogue trader, but after the battle firmly requested a tithe of war material from the rogue trader's vaults. And during the 41st millennium, the explorator fleet Hydrax Lambda 15 encountered a number of orc vessels on the edge of the warp anomaly known as the Storm of Magnus that were floating dead in the void.
Are they just out they're just out staring into the farthest reaches of the Imperium and just battling random shit? Every now and then they get a signal and they join, or like they're not accepted sometimes.
Their corridors full of dismembered orc specimens,
the fuck is this
a year or
chapter?
two old, their wounds consistent with the massive trauma inflicted by chain weapons. In one mound of corpses, there was an Aquila top standard covered with the teeth and fangs of dozens of predatory species, accompanied by a prayer scroll that read, Carcharadon Astra, by the Emperor it is willed. Similar stories can be found across the galaxy, across the millennia, though it's always difficult to track it directly back to the chapter. And given how mysterious they are, it's unknown what initially prompted them to join the conflict in the Maelstrom Zone in the early 900s M41. But the Badab War remains one of the more recent and verifiable
They might have gone on board looking at the void.
sightings of the Carcharadons.
I don't think
The
you
fleet
can
of
pin
the
these guys
Carcharadon
down.
Astra arrived without warning in the Maelstrom Zone in 910 M41, at which point the conflict in Badab had been underway for about 6 years. Initially, their arrival in a force consisting of dozens
I
of
don't know any of this shit. I don't know any of these wars. These are new stuff to me.
ships and at least 600 battle brothers, led by the flagship, the Nikor, was a cause for alarm in both the loyalist and secessionist camps, who had no
Bro, you're part of the Imperium and then you join a fight and your allies don't even know if you're on the right team or not? What the fuck? What?
no idea who they were or whose side they were about to fight on, but their leader, Tiberos, offered a surprising amount of cooperation with the inquisitorial legate Frayne and the commander of the loyalist forces, Karab Cullen of the Red Scorpions, including submitting to a psychic probe and interviewing with the Inquisitor in private. Whatever was said, and it's likely not to be much,
Bro said
Territorial
Yes to a
legate gave them
probe.
his approval, and though initially suspicious,
Same.
Lord High Commander Cullen incorporated them into his line of battle. At this point, the majority of the Loyalist forces were slowly advancing on the Badab sector itself, attempting to corral a weakened secessionist force, and so the Carcharadons were ordered to the north to reinforce elements of the Fire Angels and the Sons of Medusa fighting against the secessionist Mantis warriors in their home territory, the Endymion cluster. The Mantis warriors have been conducting a highly effective guerrilla war against the Loyalists in the cluster, but the Carcharadons effectively called their bluff by responding to this with a campaign of systemic annihilation. The chapter descended on the worlds of the cluster without mercy. At first, they confined themselves to isolated supply yards.
That's something. Just kill it. I mean, I do like the salamanders, but like, bro, just scorched earth, man.
Depots, rearming themselves from the spoils, but as the year progressed, any planet known to harbour cells of Mantis warriors was burned, its infrastructure destroyed, and mass casualties inflicted, with the
sharks are cooler than mantises.
Survivors left in a state of obvious suffering. Of course, this forced the honourable Mantis warriors to come to their people's aid, pulling them into the open and making them far easier targets for the Carcharadons' swift and brutal attacks. Within a year of their arrival, resistance in the Endymion cluster was crushed.
These guys are loyalists, surely. I hope they're loyalists. They do look bad, though. They look like the bad guys.
Crushed, and the Mantis warriors all but spent as a fighting force. Despite misgivings at their methods, Cullen then placed the chapter in the centre of the battle line for the final push on the Badab system, while the Star Phantoms conducted the main siege of Lufthuron's Palace of Thorns. The Carcharadons were loosed on the civilian hives, tearing through the scattered Astral Claws and Tyrant's Legion defenders. Their original mission parameters had been to break the hive's resistance by any means necessary, and the Carcharadons took this to heart, descending into the massive geothermal reactors at the core of the hives and rigging them to explode before escaping to orbit. As the Loyalist forces finally broke their way into the Palace of Thorns and put the traitors to flight, the detonations of the hives caused massive tectonic upheaval across the planet, resulting in even more Loyalist casualties as the Star Phantoms and their allies raced to get clear of the dying world. In the aftermath, many of the Loyalist chapters held a considerable grudge against the Carcharadons for their unique way of conducting their mission, but the chapter itself...
I mean, they said this needs to be done. Fuck it, we'll blow the whole shit up. What do you mean there's allies there? Oh well, they gotta get out then, I guess.
Elf seemed not to care, returning to the Endymion cluster alongside its new masters, the Firehawks, where after a brutal campaign of...
They're like, all the allies like, we need to talk. No, we're going back to our void. Bye. What the fuck?
Clients, they announced...
You just killed most of my chapter. What the fuck are you doing?
their tithe on the Mantis Warriors' original recruitment world of Tranquility, harvesting a new generation to fill their losses and forcing them to fight to the death to prove their worthiness to join the chapter. And with that, the Carcharadons' fleet departed back into the deep void. In the years since then, the Carcharadon Astra have been as mysterious as ever. Their forces continue to patrol the outer darkness, aware of the great rift that split the galaxy in two. Indeed, from their position in the void, the cicatrix is obvious, but their actions are, as ever, barely recorded. It's unknown when or if they received the usual emissaries of Robute Gilliman that brought so many chapters the gift of Primaris Space Marines, but at least one strike force of the chapter, under a captain called Manfor, are known to have allied themselves with Indomitus Fleet Secundus.
The fact that we're not getting, like, Polynesian names, like, come on, bro. I want one of them to be called Kamehameha. Tangatailoa. Some shit. Come on, bro. These names ain't that difficult, bro. I mean, what's a simple one? Shione. That's a simple one.
Bringing destruction to the world bearers on Budor 5. And there have been the odd depiction of...
Because, like, they could do the whole cool thing, like, bro, so many last names are, like, it's kind of like how... I think they're cool because I think, was it the Norse mythology, and then like how some of it's like, oh, your last name, oh, it's something son, like Thor, Odin's son, but like last names in like Polynesians usually mean something, and especially first names, they're meant to describe something. It's mainly like a parent's like hope of what the child could be. Some last names are like, oh, this is like, it's like Smith comes from blacksmith, like way back in the day during medieval times, your family were blacksmiths, and it'll be the same with like your family as well in Polynesia. Like, what did you do? Were you a wayfarer? And then that would determine your name and stuff like that. Were you a farmer? Were you a hunter? Were you a warrior? They could have done like something like that instead of like having the usual names. I love shit like that, man.
Maris Marines and their livery in books published since then, though we don't really know what that means. And that's the Carcharadons, or rather, the Space Sharks. The chapter was first introduced as the Space Sharks in the original Bad Ab War article in White Dwarf in 1989. In their
That's why it's a shark. It's not like a family thing. Like this one chapter is one family. This is a clan. This is their animal.
Familiar grey scheme, but with this way more comedic Jaws-like shark symbol on their shoulder. At the time, I get the impression it was kind of a joke, and they aren't really mentioned much in the rest of 40k after that. But when the Forge World released the Bad Ab War books 20 years later in 2010, their writer, Alan Bligh, gave the Space Sharks a bit of a facelift. And it's interesting how much of their continuing and evolving story was planned out at this point.
I hope they add more, man.
The key lore about the chapter that we know now is laid out in those Bad Ab War books, but it's presented as unreliable testimony from the loyalist forces that they served alongside. A bit like the Space Wolves, the Space Sharks is now a sort of erroneous name that witnesses have given them, their real title being changed here to the Carcharadons, which is of course just the Latin name for white sharks, so Carcharodon Astra does actually just mean space sharks. But what's interesting is that the rest of their origin story, all that stuff about the Terran 19th, wasn't filled in here. It was filled in not by novels or the Bad Ab books, but by the first Heresy Black books, also written by Alan Bligh, and which came out a few years later. In the third Heresy Black book, Extermination, which details the early origins of the Raven Guard Legion, we get the story about the Terran 19th, along with all these little clues and phrases that link them back to that background in the earlier Bad Ab books. And then
everything we know about them from testimonies about other people, most of them who hate them because of how they conduct things. Okay, so we know fucking nothing about these people, about this chapter. Dude, please revisit them. Do some, revamp them again, man. Give them like cool names, a bit of backstory. Come on.
In the later Black books, the story of the Ashen Claws and more lore about those missing 19th Legionnaires is expanded, and that includes a bit more extra detail. There's no...
I think the Space Wolves are the Viking ones. They need to do the same with them if they haven't. I don't know too much about them, actually. They might have like their own like Norse mythology like names of things.
Or canon link at all.
If they do, why not do the same with these guys? Space Sharks is crazy though. What the fuck?
Line anywhere in the lore that says, yep, the Carcharodons are definitely Arcasthal's Terran 19th, but you're sort of obviously meant to draw that conclusion. Then much of the detail of their current beliefs, their religion, their red and grey tides, and their links to those Ashen Claws were expanded on in 3 Black Library novels: Red Tithe and the Outer Dark by Robbie McNiven, and the recent Silent Hunters by Eduardo Albert, all of which are just really good reads. Thoroughly recommend them. So yeah, another interesting one. Originally a bit of a joke chapter, who then had to be like made sense of for the 2010 Bad Ab books, and have gone on
to be
one of the most detailed and popular chapters since then. Their stories and lore dotted across a
really?
Like made sense of for the 2010 Bad Ab books, and have gone on to be one of the most detailed and popular chapters since then. Their stories and lore dotted across a number of populations like Easter eggs, never really...
Is it the typical like white guy who has like Polynesian tribal tattoos and they know what the fuck they mean?
Confirmed. Which
is that the fanboys of these guys?
Thanks for watching.
Interesting, bro. There needs to be more. They need to add a bit more. And the same with Space Wolves. If Space Wolves don't have enough as well. I love Norse mythology, and not because I also have a little bit of Viking blood, because I'm a mongrel. Speaking the truth, man, my family's cooked. On my mom's side, I don't know my dad's side. He went to get the space shark milk.